What the fuck? Why am I? Oh! I was hearing myself for a second there, and now I'm trying to get back. Show. Oh, that's why. Oh, and there we are. It's been too long since I've actually done this shit. Wow. Wow. It's been years since I've been doing a solo stream like this. And just here I am talking about some of my favorite shit. Comic books. I fucking love them. Don't you love them? You love comic books. I love comic books. And that's why a lot of people are here. Fuck you, Sparky, you dick. Not wrong though. Welcome everybody. This is my very first review stream of, well, Rippaverse comic books. We are going to be going over, or at least I am specifically going to be going over the 4 books that have been released so far, and they are all based on this one right here. This is ISOM 1, and every character and book I'm about to talk about actually comes straight out of this particular one. And I'm going to be going over ISOM himself, Alpha Core, as well as Yaira. And yes, I will be discussing ISOM 2. We're going to be going over a few points, characters. That basically is, what we know so far of the characters, the powers, the story, and art. I'm going to maybe talk about a few points that I've seen from people in the past, as well as the present, and speculations, things that I think might actually happen in the future. So let's actually just jump into it with the very first character, Avery Silman, aka Isom. Now, I really like this book. It is a first for Eric. He has never written a comic book before. He's got some writing chops. He's written some things in the past, mostly music, or I think he said he's actually like written a few articles here and there. Either way, the guy has a little bit of writing chops, but he's never, from what we understand, done a comic book. And this is pretty damn good for a first timer. Now, there's a lot of dialogue that feels a little forced. It feels a little inorganic, but that's passable because, once again, this is a first timer who's actually writing a comic book. I can look past a little bit of dialogue here and there that just feels like, oh, that may have been odd, but whatever, not a big deal. I do love, however, the banter between Avery and Altona. That actually feels very sibling-esque. Anyone who's actually grown up with a sibling would know that even if your sibling is actually bailing you out of trouble, they're going to talk shit on you while doing so. But let's go over the character. Now, the book itself actually opens up with a fairly interesting moment of somebody really pissed off, and it's in the police precinct, or at least some kind of a policing station. And it's announced that she's back. Who's she? You find out later. Cuts to Avery at his home, working out, gets a call from his sister. His sister asks him to go and do a favor for a family friend. Simple as that. Why is he doing this favor for a family friend? Because it's a family friend. It's not that hard to fucking figure out. They grew up together. Oh my God, why is he doing this for his sister? It's his sister. His sister's asking him to go and like take a look at something. Why him specifically? You find out later it's because Avery has a little secret that she knows about very clearly. Interesting. Now, As the story progresses, we meet the first villain of the universe, Darren Fontana. Fuck this man. I hate his guts, and that's what makes him such a good villain. You're not supposed to like the villains. You're not supposed to like the Joker. You're supposed to be entertained by the Joker, but you're supposed to actually hate the Joker. But that's no longer the case in a lot of mainstream comic books. Is you actually love the villain just as much as you love the hero, and that's fine to a certain degree. I can understand why some people would take the modern day Magneto and actually like that character, which I kind of do myself. But at the same time, bad guys are supposed to be bad guys. You're not supposed to like these characters. That's just how it is. You're not supposed to like them. And Darren Fontana is definitely one of those characters that I like to hate. He is a club owner and obviously the head of a criminal organization, so to speak. There's no official name for it, but he's essentially a mob boss type character. And with the last name Fontana, can you really blame him? Now, Avery does eventually go to Darren's club because that's kind of the information that Altona gives him in order to basically find this girl. He does eventually find her. Problem is, it's one of those situations where, like, oh, I don't know where my daughter is. Well, now she's a streetwalker. Is that really surprising? She's not actually a streetwalker, but she does work for Darren, and you get the impression that she doesn't want to work for Darren, but she kind of doesn't have a choice because Darren's kind of a horrible person. We meet our second villain shortly after meeting Darren, and that just so happens to be Santuan. Now, I also don't like Santuan, but here's the thing. Santuan is one of my favorite kinds of villains. His motivation is written on his face. Quite literally, he actually has gold grills, as you can see in the art. Well, the camera is kind of fuzzy right now, but yeah, basically he's got gold teeth. So obviously his motivation is money. As long as he's getting paid, he'll do what he's told. It's as simple as that. But strong man, Except. Oh, one other thing. Excepts are this world's mutants or metahumans. I'm not sure exactly how you want to really classify them, but basically every universe has their supers, their metahumans, their mutants, whatever word associates with people naturally born with superpowers or people that just simply have superpowers. Santuan's is clearly super strength, and I would give it super durability. Like, he's not invincible because he does get his ass kicked later on in the book. But he's pretty damn durable. And when he actually encounters Avery for the first time, Avery gets his ass kicked. Now, that is just the first bit, the first half, essentially, of ISOM. The story continues on, and I will give a little bit more spoilers later. But what we see so far with Avery is that he is a bit arrogant. He's kind of a hothead. And when I say kind of a hothead, I mean when it comes to personal attacks, he does not take well to those. If you basically insult him because you're trying to get under his skin, he's going to take it as disrespect. If he takes too much disrespect, he's going to pretty much throw his personal mission or whatever that he was there for out the window, because how fucking dare you talk to me like that? This is a character flaw. This is meant to be one of his obvious flaws. He's kind of an idiot in this regard. He is a flawed person. He's a flawed man. He does not like being disrespected like that, and he was being disrespected in a room full of people that he doesn't know. He just met. He shouldn't give a fuck about their opinions of him, especially Darren. But that's kind of what characters like this do. They don't like. Great example. Marty McFly, Back to the Future. Couldn't stand being called a chicken. Didn't like the idea that people considered him to be a coward. Now, this was a story arc that didn't really come up until part 2, and it continued into part 3, but it was still a part of Marty McFly's flaws. That is Avery Silman's flaw. he is actually someone who does not like to be disrespected, especially in front of a bunch of people, strangers or otherwise. So, obvious flaw gets him in trouble. He gets into a fight with Santuan. He gets his ass kicked. Mind you, after, I believe, he's already gotten his ass kicked by Yaira, a random blonde chick flying through the air who basically just grabs him, flies into the air, and drops him onto a car. Not a great first meeting, if you ask me. And of course, Yaira is actually trying to evade in that entire scenario Alpha Core. She mistakes Isom for Alpha Core. He mistakes her for, well, basically another one of Darren's henchmen, because he just realized that Darren hires Exeps to pretty much take out the trash. Avery, the trash. And Santuan just kind of fucked him up. And then he gets dropped onto a car. He gets taken to the hospital. They take his clothes. He needs to actually leave. He doesn't really want to do paperwork. He's walking around kind of naked. His sister picks him up, bails him out, and actually helps him out with some clothing. Or no, takes him back to his place, or a place, so he can actually get clothes on, and basically makes fun. Fantastic. I actually like Avery's character a lot. He was a hero at one point in the story, and we don't find out about that until like number 2. But he retired. This particular scenario that his sister asked him to go on, it eventually brings him back into the fold. Pretty much it's sort of a redemption arc, and we didn't watch the fall before the redemption. We get a glimpse of the fall before the redemption, but this is essentially, we're jumping into a redemption arc. Now, one of my favorite parts about this is the fact that the story doesn't just hold your hand. It already you're already going into it with a sort of mature palette for these types of things. You already know a lot of the stories that happen with, the hero's journey and so on and so forth. This story is essentially the beginning of the redemption arc kind of thing, where Avery and the dogs are barking. If you can hear the dogs, I do apologize about that. The neighbors' dogs sometimes cause my dogs to bark, and the neighbors have a cat, and the cat likes to be an asshole. Anyways, so Isom is pretty much the beginning of a sort of redemption arc, where Avery is pretty much coming back into being a superhero, and he's slowly starting to realize like some of the problems he had in the past. He's realizing his own flaws, and he's trying to actually remedy that. So after he sort of starts to learn a bit, he's not done. He's still on a mission. He still needs to find this girl, and he does eventually find this girl, like I said. But what happens is he goes back. God damn, the art in this fucking book is so good. He goes back because he hasn't quite learned his lesson, but at the same time, he is learning. Now, one thing that has actually been kind of front and center, Avery's powers are very much similar to that. So let's actually talk about the powers for a bit here. Avery seems to have enhanced strength, enhanced reaction speed, and quite possibly even enhanced perception. In other words, he can actually see and understand things much faster than a normal human being, very similar to Captain America. So imagine Isom is similar to Captain America, except he didn't need to go through a super soldier program in order to actually get these enhanced abilities. But also, like Captain America, his powers do kind of evolve over time. And the reason why I say this is because he gets dropped by Santuan. He gets dropped by Yaira. I said Ira. He comes back to Club Merc, where that's Darren's headquarters and stuff. He finds the girl, as I said. And you find out that he's kind of in the middle of something with Darren that he maybe doesn't want to actually be, but at the same time, he's kind of like, he's still got that superhero mentality. So he doesn't give up. He keeps going. He keeps pushing. And he actually beats the shit out of Santuan. How? Why? His powers evolve. I need you all to really understand that this is clearly inspired by Captain America and the Super Saiyans. He lost a fight with Santuan and Yaira, and he came back stronger than Santuan to actually beat his ass. They do fight to a standstill at one point in the book, and there is that very confusing splash page at one point in the middle of that particular fight, which does cause a lot of people to be a bit confused. And in all fairness, it is. I still like it, though. I still like all of this because you can see very, very clearly that Avery has powers that evolve with time and experience. Every fight he's in, he gets just a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. He understands his opponent just a little bit more, almost to the point where he can start to predict them, to where, like, if certain villains would probably come up against him and basically just do the same repetitive moves over and over again, he will mentally know automatically without thinking about it how to, wow, that run-on sentence just sounded stupid. He will automatically know how to counter it or what to do to basically counter that entire scenario. It's right there, plain as day. You can read it. If you need your hand held, if you need little subtext to actually explain every single little detail about what's going on, why this person's doing this, what this person's motivation is, get out of the room, go touch grass, reevaluate the way you're reading comic books, I guess, maybe. I don't know, but it's obvious. It's all right here. All of those questions were right here. All you had to do was keep reading. But a lot of people, they pirated it, and it was an incomplete book. It was also like, I think some people were saying some of the scans were altered to actually have completely different dialogue. I don't know, but there was a lot of craziness coming out with this. But there was one thing I wanted to actually talk about. When, Eric? When am I getting this book, Eric? I've been waiting. I've got no word. I've got nothing. When am I getting that book? And you know what's worse? I'll tell you what makes it so much worse, okay? All right? Hold on. Let me get back to that page, okay? Yeah. There's something going on over this side. Something is up here. This character, this one right here. I have questions. I have a lot of questions, Eric. You fuck. So, what do I think is actually coming when it comes to ISOM? Well, based off of ISOM 1 and ISOM 2, I pretty much gather that he is going to obviously continue with his books, his stories, and all that good stuff. His powers are going to continue to evolve. He is going to get a real symbol. One thing about the cross on the belt line, that's not his symbol. That's just a symbol. He's obviously Christian, or at least was raised in a Christian household. And that symbol is meant to pay respect to his family, to his upbringing, and all of that. But that's not his symbol. He doesn't have a symbol yet. That's kind of the point. I would not be surprised if ISOM 3 came out next year, and then boom, the ISOM symbol right there in front of our faces. Eric is probably working on it right now as we speak. Well, no, not right now as we speak. I actually know he's still at the meet and greet with Nerdrotics and everybody else over in Dallas. So, I mean, but you get the idea. He probably has a symbol somewhere out there. But I think he's going to get stronger. I think we're going to discover that his powers come from a very interesting source, possibly divine. That's my guess. If I had to guess on anything, which would actually mean that there is that possibility that Avery is actually the Rippaverse's very first paladin or paladin-esque character. I don't quote me on that. I'm just saying this is what I'm thinking is going to eventually come about. But with every fight, he gets stronger, he gets faster, he learns better. ISOM 2. We're introduced to two new characters that are actually going to have their own books coming out later on this year. The very next book released by Rippaverse is actually going to be this man here. Oh, where'd he go? Gooding. Gooding is a very interesting character. Now, I think he is an except, but I think his brain is similar to that of Forge from the X-Men, where if he can think it, he can make it. And because of that, he actually functions more like a Tony Stark Iron Man-esque character. He doesn't have super strength. He doesn't have flight. He can't shoot lasers out of his eyes or his ass or any of that stuff. But his brain is super genius. He can create all sorts of tech beyond anything we've ever seen. And he creates all these little awesome droids to basically do all sorts of things for him. He's essentially a one-man firefighting team, which I absolutely love. And we get a little bit of that in here. A little bit. I need more, Eric. I know that the book from Mike Barron is coming out soon. I need it now. But as the story continues, it picks up from where we kind of left off in ISOM 1. It's not really a direct one-to-one, immediately picks up from there, because ISOM basically is wearing his suit at the end of ISOM 1. And he pretty much is saying it still fits. Now, in this book, we learn that he actually retired, or he essentially stopped being a hero years ago. We don't know how many years ago, but in the end of ISOM, we actually see, hold on, we see him say, it still fits. Where the hell is it? There we go. Still fits. Now, that gives me the impression years ago in ISOM 2, and still fits, probably means that Avery would be, I'd say, Avery's probably in his early 30s, and it was maybe about 5 to 10 years ago that he stopped being a hero. That's just my guess, because as I stated, it is in ISOM 2 that we learn from this panel specifically. I'm not going to ruin the whole thing. In this panel, no, you can't see it very well, but it says years ago in the top left corner of the book. It just says years ago. It doesn't say 1 year ago. It doesn't say 2 years ago. It doesn't say 10 years ago. It just says years ago. So my guess is Avery was in his early 20s, much like a lot of up-and-coming superheroes, was attempting to become the next best superhero, the next big superhero, something along those lines. He was probably inspired by somebody. He gained his powers, or he developed his powers over time, realized he kept getting stronger and faster and all that good stuff. And then somewhere in his early 20s, this incident happens. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole incident because that poor girl. I'm going to say that another couple of times as this review continues on, by the way. But yeah, something really bad happens, and it's the very thing that causes him to retire. Now, here's the interesting part. Chadron, Fuckface McGee. Fuckface McGee is a villain that we are introduced to, and he is the reason why ISOM does retire. We're probably going to see him in ISOM 3. Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Another great villain, by the way, who we don't know necessarily his motivation. He's just kind of a monster, and he does monstrous things. Darren's a monster, and he does things for money, for power, because he's essentially a mob boss type character. Santuan is basically nothing more than just a power hungry, money hungry henchman who will do whatever you want for money. Fair enough. Very easy, very obvious motivation. We don't know what Fuckface McGee's motivation is in this. He could be one of those characters that has no motivation, and that's terrifying. That's horrible, terrifying. The story will continue on. Altona in the very beginning does have a little brush up with Darren, because Darren sort of not breaks into, but just essentially waltzes into Altona's office in the very beginning of ISOM 2. And then Altona's boss comes up like the boss motherfucker he is, and pretty much already has like armed squad rolling up in body armor, and he's pointing fingers. Lincoln, I can never remember how to say his last name, even when they say it on other live streams and stuff. It's Lincoln. I'm just going to call him Lincoln. Lincoln shows up. He's got armed guards, basically his own personal SWAT team, and they come up to Darren like, do something, bitch. And Darren leaves. Great. I love Lincoln. Altona's boss is fucking awesome. I love his enthusiasm. I love that he's essentially that guy, like that, you know, if you had the skills, you'd probably want to work with him. Avery kind of picks up where we left off as the story rolls on, and you get the little flashback scene, and he's talking to this guy who pretty much made his cost. And he gives him some really sound advice, because in ISOM 1, at the end of ISOM 1, when Avery's getting his suit back, he asks him, what do you want the suit, what features do you want the suit to have? And Avery says, absorb fall damage, which is funny because that's basically what got him in trouble earlier. He kept getting thrown through things and then dropped by Yaira onto a car. I would want fall damage absorption as well in the suit. So the guy is actually pleased. He sees that Avery has grown, but there's a problem. So Avery, in ISOM 1, we see that Avery actually has a farm, and he had, well, a ranch, really. He has a ranch, and most likely, from what I gathered, just based off of, you know, my own experience and everything, Avery actually has a ranch that's sole purpose is to fund, no, not so much fund, provide various types of feed, equipment, parts, all of those things for local farmers. So basically, he creates everything. There are certain words that I'm looking for in my brain, and like my brain is suddenly going, we don't know what the dictionary is. We don't know what the English language is. Stop asking me. But it seems like Silman Ranch provides local farmers in Texas, in that particular region, with a variety of different supplies that they need, like feed for the animals and all kinds of stuff like that. So in ISOM 2, we actually find out when Avery goes back to his farm that Sam has gone missing, unfortunately. And there's these weird demon alien creatures that are pretty much like going through his security system. Then they set it on fire. That's when Gooding comes in, and Eric, I cannot stress this enough. I need the book now. I know you have stacks of them in your warehouse. Give me the books. And the hat. You see this hat? It would have been better if it was that hat. Give us the hat, Eric. Oh, shit. I just realized that might get clipped and sent to him. Twitter. Oh, Ram, don't worry if you're late to the stream. I actually didn't expect anyone to be here to watch this. So I'm genuinely pleased that there's even like a couple of viewers at this point. Like that, it's no big deal if you're late or not. It's fine. Story continues on. There's a little bit more of Alpha Core in this one, because we got a little bit of Alpha Core in ISOM 1, and essentially they are set up to basically be just super police. That's it. There's nothing really else special about them. That's what I'm saying now, because I'm trying to be a smartass. Because let me just tell you, These were the guys that got the biggest attention from me. I saw the art and I instantly was like, is that a Superman? What's going on here? Why is that girl got weird green glowing whips? Who's the dude with the helmet? I have questions. I need answers. Well, the dude with the helmet is Braxwell. The girl with the glowing green whips is Ingrid Valdez. And Brian Solari is the Superman looking guy with the big green cape. I will discuss more about them soon enough. I'm still talking about ISOM 2. Now, we do get a little bit of exposition from Alpha Core, which is great. I love seeing Alpha Core making appearances in other books. And then all of that stuff had happened. You find out that Sam's gone missing. So now, Avery, after finding the girl in the first book, he sort of can close the books on that one. He can tell his sister Altona where she is because he knows where she is. And unfortunately, there's nothing they can do about that. Avery's now moving on to the next important thing in, going on in his life. His farmhand, his right-hand man, Sam. Oh my God, what was his last name? It's not Wilkins. Is it Winslow? Wilson? There's a W. Sam. Forgetting his last name at the moment, but Sam is the one who is he's missing. I love this too, by the way, the little ad for Gooding. That was such a great piece of detail right there, because like packages as low as $49.99 a month for his services. Medical response, fire extinguishing, criminal investigation, and much more. It's an ad for a character that doesn't have his own book yet. He's offering a monthly subscription. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the actual combination of Cliff Richards and Gabe El-Tayeb. They have been getting skewered for the last couple of years for these books and the artistry and all that stuff. I really enjoy the coloring. Gabe knocked it the hell out of the park. Gabe basically took all of the scenes and colored them brilliantly. Gave all the great shot. Oh my God, I loved it. And then Cliff Richards' art, it's great. Yes, 3D assets. Yes, whatever. I don't fucking care. Marvel and DC have been doing that for decades. Shut the hell up already, okay? But the artwork is great. I don't have a lot of, patience for really shitty art. I could bring out the Spider-Gwen books that I had from Marvel when I was still buying books. The first set of books that I have, pretty damn good art. And then a few books into it, they changed it up to this jagged mess. It like everything was horrendously exaggerated in like the worst ways possible. Every thing was sharp. It just, oh God, the art was so awful. I was willing to put up with it because I thought maybe the story was going to be good. It wasn't. I gave up after like X amount of books because I was just like, I can't keep going. It just keeps getting worse and worse. None of the story is making sense. Some of the characters are just either way too bland or way too over the top. It bugged the shit out of me. But Cliff and Gabe, I absolutely love the art for these books, and I cannot wait for to see what they do for ISOM 3. It's been a while since we had an ISOM book, to be completely honest. And I think that is primarily because before the ill-advised arc was over, which this is what it is. This is books 1 and 2 for the ill-advised arc, which is essentially the first arc that the book takes place in and all that stuff. And then 3 is supposed to be the conclusion of the ill-advised arc. And man, I can't wait to see how it actually concludes. More Darren and Santuan. Fucking love these characters. Love to hate them is really like what I mean to say. And then after this little back and forth, right? Wrestling. Eric, if you're seeing this, I need more of that. Give us more of that. We've been asking it since this part of the book in ISOM 2. Who's Larry Shungite? What's up with the Wrestling Federation in your comic book? I have questions. I want answers. I want more entertainment. I love pro wrestling. Gimme. I don't doubt it. Oh, Willard. Sam Willard. There it is. That's so eventually Isom gets enough information with the help of Gooding, and then Gooding actually directs him to go and talk to somebody that would be able to help him based on the creatures that they came across. To this lady. She's got a book coming out later on this year in the fall, Bloodruth. Oh my God. I have never encountered such an interesting character. First of all, when you meet her for the first time, it's basically the most cliche horror movie castle-like house that you'll come across. Like, for some reason, old rickety ass wooden stairs he's got to go up, and he's got to cross a rickety ass wooden bridge to come up to some old stone like door wall castle like structure and shit. Then there's these bats, these gargoyles, these alligators. Again, it's the most horror movie cliche horror house that you would come across. And then Bloodruth shows up and all the animals chill the fuck out. And she's accompanied by a wolf. I'm in. I need this book. And man, it just keeps getting more and more interesting from there, because clearly Bloodruth has some sort of magical abilities, but she also has this weird power that involves her own blood, where she essentially either just simply draws it out of herself, or maybe she's like, I don't know if you guys ever seen some of those classic like witch movies from the 80s and 90s and stuff. Sometimes they would have these little like finger claw things for like special rituals, usually on the thumb or the finger, and essentially all they would do is wait, actually I think this was in Interview with the Vampire. No, I wouldn't have done that. But basically there's a movie scene where somebody has this little thing on their thumb and it's got a claw and it just goes straight into the wrist of somebody else. She might have one of those things. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. She's got midriff showing and then the blood. And I'm like, where the fuck is it coming from? And it's really fucking interesting because she then uses it in so many different ways. The powers are very interesting because she can create like technical platforms with the blood, making them solid. She can shoot it at creatures to probably make like a blood spike that goes straight through their chest or something like that. It looks like she can also use it to pretty much like blow up a door or a wall or something. The possibilities are endless. And why I say that is because that is exactly what she's doing in this scene. She is putting her blood onto this freaking door, wooden door, stone structure, and she makes it explode. I need to know more about this chick. I need to know more about this blood witch. That is probably one of the most interesting characters. And the next review on Rippaverse characters is going to be with Gooding and fucking Bloodruth. Why? Because they were introduced in ISOM #2, and their books are coming out later on this year. So at the end of the year or beginning of next year, I'm probably going to do a review on Gooding and Bloodruth, and I have to Horseman. Just have to. Of these two books, I would honestly give them 3.5 bloody axes for this. Yes, bloody axe is my rating system. 3.5 bloody axes for this one. This was actually a good read. I like the jumping off point. I like how it doesn't hold your hand. And then like the only reason why it gets a 3.5 is because this one gets an also, it gets a 4.5 in my opinion. 3.5 out of 5. It's like a 5-star rating, but it's bloody axes. So 3.5 bloody axes out of 5, 4.5 bloody axes out of 5. I really, really like these books. They're great if you are an old fan of comic books or a new fan of comic books. These are definitely must picks, in my opinion. They are written by Eric July himself. The pencil artist is Cliff Richards, and the inker or colorist is basically Gabe Eltahi. The three of them are an amazing combination, and I absolutely love those two books. Definitely, you should pick them up. I highly recommend them. The third book in the Rippaverse, 4 books so far. Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Chuck Dixon is a fucking legend in comic book history. This man is responsible for some of the most interesting characters and story arcs with Batman from way back in like the 80s and early 90s. Okay. Chuck Dixon is as stated multiple times by Eric July, one of the most prolific writers in comic book history. Joe Bennett is a phenomenal artist, and he's also a legend in the comic book pro circles, but not just because he does really good monster art and everything like that. He's really, really good at that. It's because of some other stuff that happened with Joe, but we're not going to get into that. So we have Alpha Core here. And just like with ISOM 1 and 2, this one does not hold your hands. If you've read ISOM 1 and you read ISOM 2, you already know who Alpha Core is. So Chuck jumps you right into it to give you a little hint as to what the characters are like. All right? Now, before... Oh, shit. I just realized I was supposed to cover over things. All right. So, character. Had some notifications that was confusing. Character. Isom's a very interesting character. I've already talked at length about him. Altona, we don't get a whole lot of, but basically, she is his sister. She is a single mother, unfortunately, and she is the technical genius and real athlete of the family because Darren sort of, puts Avery down by bringing up the fact that she was not only she accelerated at athletics but also academics. Lincoln is her boss, and he's a very interesting character that I would love to learn more about, and we kind of do in one of those books. Darren is a great villain, as I already pointed out. Santuan is a great villain, as I already pointed out. Chadron can go fuck himself. And I think I've talked enough about ISOM, to be completely honest, because the only thing that I basically needed to really talk about was I've already talked about it. So here we have Alpha Core number 1. It opens up with not a terrorist, but basically, kind of a terrorist. A guy essentially trying to rob a bank of some sort. Yeah, rob a bank and get away with it. So it's a huge, huge standoff with police, basically, standing there and got a gun pointed at him, got several guns pointed at him because this was great art. And the guy has a hostage, but not for long because my man, Brian motherfucking Solari, shows up, Mr. Bulletproof himself, grabs the guy, takes him into the air as Superman would have, separates him from the vest that he's wearing because he's got bombs strapped to his chest to basically prevent people from doing things, tosses the vest into the sky. It goes off. Villain falls down. Solari retrieves the villain and then brings the villain back to the police for him to get arrested. And then you get a little bit of a hint of X-Men-esque kind of vibes where Solari is not actually being praised for saving the day. Like, hey, thanks for the assist, Brian. No. It turns out Alpha Core is only called when freak calls are necessary. Freak calls. And that is actually what he says. You know the rules for accepts. You come when we call you. You come when it's a freak call. Remember when I said earlier accepts was essentially this world's mutant? That kind of gets a little more showcase here. And Brian did not appreciate that particular comment because he keeps bringing it up throughout the book. And in all fairness, I'm with Brian on this one. Like, who the fuck do you think you are to say freak calls, dick? Besides, I mean, like, do you really want to talk shit to a man who can fly through the air and take a bullet like it was nothing? Bullets bounced off of his chest right in front of your very own eyes, and you really think that saying he's a freak is actually a good idea? Not smart. Not smart. We are, of course, introduced to our new villains of the Alpha Core book, Lillian Renashi. What the? How do you say her fucking last name? What's it spelled like? Lillian and Michael Copper. These two also can eat a fat dick because they're great villains. They are. What kind of villains would I equate them to? They are akin to a James Bond-like villain. You know, okay, so Darren Fontano is very much the mob boss type villain. Santuan is very much the strong muscle villain, you know, that guy that the hero is going to have to eventually overcome. Lillian and Michael, they're like people you probably would have seen go toe-to-toe with James Bond in a much more high-tech, high-stakes kind of movie. These two damn near win, in all fairness, as the story progresses. Now, some of you are probably noticing as I flash this around, there is a thing here, and I'll explain that in just a little bit. By the way, Joe blew my head back with this art. He did. I honestly, I didn't know necessarily what to expect. I saw some of the interiors when they would actually give like little samples here and there. The inside was so much better than I had hoped for. It's so good. So we get more of the characters. We have Ingrid Valdez, and she's essentially the straight shooter type character in Alpha Core. She will not go out on a call unless unless Alpha Core has actually been called. She's trying to follow the rules as best as possible. She takes on a partner who turns out to be a secret exec, and she is also a brilliant investigator. Like, essentially, she is a super cop. When it comes to the whole super police, super cop moniker that keeps being flung around throughout all of these books, Ingrid is the super cop because everything about her is straight and narrow super cop. Like, she has superpowers, fucking laser whips and shit. And she's got that like uncorruptible cop mentality. Brian is really very much like the Superman. He'll follow the rules until the rules are no longer to be heeded, because if he doesn't break the rules, people are going to die. People are going to get hurt. And that's exactly what happens at the very beginning of the book, because the terrorist that has the bomb on his chest, the bomb goes off and he's surprised, meaning it was going to go off after a specific amount of time, not when he pulls the trigger. So that right there tells you that, like, if Brian had not stepped in, not only would that hostage be dead, not only would the criminal be dead, but a lot of cops would probably be dead right there. So obviously Brian stepped in, did the right thing, and pretty much saved everyone's lives in that particular ordeal. And then there's Braxwell, the quiet. I don't know what to make of Braxwell. I just think, okay, so he's the, you know, the strong silent type, literally, because he can fly and he's super strong. He's kind of like a combination of Ingrid and Brian, but he's a mute who can actually talk until the end of the book when he finally says one word. If I remember correctly, it was just one word. And it was fucking hilarious. Shit. Anyways. So the story continues on, and pretty much Alpha Core are kind of following up on a few things that had actually happened, because it turns out the guy who was robbing that bank was working for both Michael and Lillian. And then because Brian stepped in, plans had to change, characters had to be recruited a lot sooner. Billy Bob Quinn is probably one of my more favorite characters of the villains in this one, because he's such a hick, but he's a fire lava monster hick. So he basically turns into a lava monster at one point in the story to essentially take out Brian. Now, Brian is very much the Superman character. He has super strength, he can fly through the air. He has speed, essentially. He has a form of super speed, and he's nearly invulnerable. Obviously, there are certain elements that he is, going to be weak against, similar to that of Superman. Braxwell seems to be similar to Brian in that regard, but maybe he's like a nerfed version of what Brian is. And then Ingrid seems to have agility, combat prowess, tactical brain, like, super tactical brain kind of thing. And of course, control over these strange laser whips that she has, like, wrapping around her body and everything. She's fucking awesome. They inevitably uncover that there's some people out there that are working behind the scenes in the shadows to get something, but they don't know what it is. It seems like it might be money. It seems like it might be information for power. But overall, they never really find out precisely what they're trying to. Well, that's not entirely true. I'm just saying that because I'm trying to encourage people to actually go and buy the Alpha Core book. I'm also giving away some spoilers, but also trying to keep certain other spoilers a bit under wraps because, again, I really want people to go and read the book. But I'm going to show you my absolute favorite scene. This solidified for me Brian Solari being my absolute favorite character. That surprised look on his face. Now, prior to that look, he has a disc from Michael and Lillian, and he wants to put it into the Alpha Core computer so they can decipher it and find out what those two have been up to. He is told by one of their technicians, don't do that. That's a bad. We don't know what's in that thing. And the meathead jock himself grabs the disc, puts it into the computer. What's the worst that can happen? And the alarms go off, and his look is, oops. Oh, he's such a meathead, and I love him for it. I love him. Oh, my God. Brian Solari is by far my absolute favorite character of the Rippaverse. Story and art. The Alpha Core story was fucking phenomenal. Chuck really knocked it out of the park. Made me so interesting. Made the whole thing so interesting that I couldn't put it down. I couldn't. Like, as soon as I got the book, I was so excited. I posted on social media. I said, look what's here. And I read it in one sitting. I did the same thing for these guys too. But I instantly read this one. I actually was donating plasma when I read these two. Or more specifically, I was finishing up ISOM 1 when I actually was donating plasma. And then I came home and immediately started reading ISOM 2 because I'd actually bought them both at the same time. Yeah, Alpha Core, I bought, obviously separate, couldn't put it down. I think I reread it like a couple of days later because it was just so damn good. I loved it. I'm going to give Alpha Core, and it's a little bit biased because of Solari, but I'm giving it 5 bloody axes. Perfect score, in my opinion. The art is top notch. The story is top notch. I love it. It's a great starting off point. This is the book. Like, if you really, really have wanted to get into a new universe, a new book, some new characters, and like you feel betrayed by Marvel and DC, maybe even Image and Top Cow and a bunch of other people for shit that they've said, done, discontinued, stories you really didn't like, whatever the case is. And you're just looking for something to like, kind of take your attention back a little bit. Maybe you could be done with comic books entirely. I would still encourage you to grab Alpha Core #1 as like a sort of pick me up, as a sort of bring me back. What do you have going? I'm not saying ISOM is like lesser than, well, people are going to see it that way anyways. But great books to start off with. This does not hold your hand. This continues to not hold your hand. This throws you into a world you just want to know more about. All 3 books I highly recommend. I heavily suggest you actually go and get them if you have not got them. Ladies, Jen and Sylv Saska fucked me up with this. Deborah Carita is the artist for this one. She's the one who did all the penciling. Now, we don't actually know who was the colorist on this one because, well, I mean, we technically do. You can look it up online. But their name is not accredited here. And it's the same thing with Yaira. It's Deborah was the pencilist, was the pencilist, and Joe Bennett was the pencilist for Alpha Core. Yaira is the final book of all the characters introduced in this one. Yaira is the newest book and the one I suggest you pick up if your favorite characters throughout the comic book reading world were She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman. If you were just immediately drawn to the female heroes, Yaira is your book. Yaira is so damn good. Let me just give you some examples of the internals here, interiors, whatever, the inside of the book. Okay, real quick. Okay. What the shit is happening in that scene? This sick bastard is doing something, and that's the thing. Like, what the fuck is happening? It turns out that weird bug creature is some sort of a black magician or a black sorcerer or something like that. Like, essentially, they actually refer to him. Magus Numite is the black sorcerer, I think was his title. That would be like the closest translation to our language, because most of the actual dialogue between Yaira and her villains are, interestingly enough, in a completely different language. And it's a foreign language from a different fucking planet. What? A what now? Yeah. So very early on, if anyone was paying attention to the Eric July streams, what you would actually find out is that Eric July hates the multiverse. However, he is not opposed to other worlds, other dimensions, and things like that, which is technically a multiverse, but not the multiverse that we are referring to. When we're talking about a multiverse, in terms of comic books, it is basically Universe 1, Universe 2, Universe 3, and so on. You can also have Universe 1A, Universe 1B, shit like that. There's too many potentials, too many possibilities where essentially you have characters that are gay in some universes and not gay in other universes, and it causes massive confusion because then people start to ask, well, so are they? Like, it's just, it's annoying. It's very annoying. Yeah. This fucked me up because I couldn't stop reading it. I couldn't put it down. And let me just tell you, this is like, it was already shared. by Hail the Lore. Shout out to Hail the Lore. I admire that guy. He's one of those people that when he's got your back, he's got your back. He is ride or die. He does not stray from the pack, even for the slightest bit, until you give him a reason to not like you anymore. That guy is like loyal, and he will definitely showcase other people's stupidity when they really want to act really fucking stupid. So let's take a look. Where's that page at? There was something that I had made mention in on social media not that long ago, a spoiler in the middle of the book that made me go, I see what you did there, Eric. And Hail the Lore actually shared it on social media. I didn't say anything when I saw it, because I was like, just wait for the review. Yeah, Rippaverse Comics is canon inside Rippaverse Comics. So a bit meta there, don't you think, Eric? I don't know whose idea that was. It was probably the Saska's, just for fucking shits and giggles. But at the same time, I love that moment. Like, as I'm reading the book, I'm really absorbing the lore. I'm absorbing all these characters. The artwork is so fucking crisp. One of my favorite things about Deborah's artwork is she really brought back the hatching and cross hatching style of details. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. When I say brought back, I'm not saying she's the only one doing it. She's not. Cannon White is it Cannon White or is it Canaan White? Cap White on X. He also does it. He does the hatching and the cross hatching and stuff like that. Deborah is another one of those artists who is also doing that. Now, hatching and cross hatching are just simple lines. Hatching is just lines to basically give detail for shadowing, muscle definition, all that stuff. Cross hatching is essentially where line. That's what that is. Artists have been doing that for decades. It's not anything new, and it's not like it went away. But if you actually pay attention to a lot of artists, some people still do it online, but there's a lot of newer artists, especially, who seem to step away from the hatching and the cross hatching. There's little hints here and there, but then they instantly fill it in with like very dark lines that kind of takes the element away. And I actually really appreciate Deborah. I'm like, okay, here's a great example. On the cheek right here, that's hatching. I appreciate that kind of detail in this sort of art because it, to me, it's reminiscent of like the older days, the John Byrne She-Hulk comic book days. I really like that art. That was the type of art that really got me into comic books. And of course, also the Jim Lee exaggerated body types, the Joe Mad exaggerated like art styles, the Todd McFarlane's extreme artwork across the goddamn book, all that stuff. I love all of that stuff. But what really caught my attention was like the John Byrne type of artwork. That's the shit that I really, really appreciate. And like I said, Deborah's not the only one doing this. She's not really bringing it back. But it is front and center. It is on display for everyone to see, and I appreciate it. Because there's a lot of artwork nowadays. There's a lot of books nowadays that I actually see, and it just, you know, that was an element that I think has kind of been sort of pushed to the side. Like, it's still there, but it doesn't get as much credit as it should probably get credit for. So I really, really heavily appreciate Deborah's art in this, and she really, really knocked it out of the park. This one's also getting a 5 bloody axes from me. And the artwork on the front, if you didn't know, that's actually Canaan White. I'm just going to say Canaan White because it's 2 A's. That's his artwork. That was the first one that they had actually showed us. That was the sample, the little like, here's the you did so good on the Alpha Corp campaign. Here's the cover for one of the books in Yaira. And I was like, that's the one I'm gonna fucking get because that's awesome. Now, Yaira's powers. She has ice powers, flight, super strength, and super speed. She is essentially Wonder Woman with extra steps. She does have the. She's not nearly invulnerable. She takes a hell of a beating in this book, but she does have the super speed. She does have the flight. She does have the strength, and she also has ice powers. Now, these ice powers are actually really cool because at one point she does unleash a blizzard to get the attention of Alpha Core. One of the things I also appreciate about this book is we get more Alpha Core and I get more Solari. Just saying. Like I love fucking Brian Solari. I don't know if you guys know that. Like I'm a huge fan of Brian Solari. And so I get more of him. Now, one of my favorite things about this is Yaira is such a bitch and she keeps flirting, like play flirting, because she says things like, if you keep showing up like this, I'm going to assume you really like me. You know, kind of like the, oh, you just want to arrest me because you think I'm hot. Tee-hee-hee. Yaira's being kind of that way. Like, she's being very cheeky in that sense. But I'm going to let you know right now, ladies, I ship it. I'm going to be honest, I ship it. If that comes out as an actual thing, I'll just be like, yay. I hate shippers, by the way. I don't like, most of the time they're fine because it's just people who say like, I like these two as a couple. It's a really nice idea, but they don't go crazy over it. It's the psychotic ones that like, you know, believe in my ship. No, those are the ones that I'm like, get the fuck out of here. But I do occasionally make those jokes because they're fun. Now, the only negative things I would honestly say about these books is that they end. There's an actual ending. Phenomenal first time writing a comic book. ISOM 2 got better with the writing. The dialogue felt way more organic. It didn't feel quite as forced. It actually gave a little more exposition. It gave a little more to the story. So I definitely saw improvement from Eric on ISOM 1, from ISOM 1 into ISOM 2. Chuck blew my head back with Alpha Core 1. He made me really like love Brian Solari so much more. And then Jen and Sylvia, man, ladies just, and they're bringing up the new Bloodruth book. Just saying, they didn't just get one book, they got two books. And then Chuck convinced Eric July to give him and Joe another book. That's Horseman. That's going to be coming out pretty soon. After Gooding, after Mike Barron brings us Gooding, do we get Horseman? Yeah, we get Horseman. And then we get Bloodruth. Those three, plus possibly ISOM 3, are going to be on my next review stream. But fuck me, these damn books are phenomenal. So, once again, 3.5 Bloody X's. 4.5 Bloody X. 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5. I love these books so much. I need more. I also need the hat, Eric. Give me the fucking hat. I believe that this stream has been going on long enough. It has been an hour of me just talking about Rippaverse comic books. But let me just actually go ahead and say a few things. So they keep hinting at so many different things, and I don't know what to really like go by. I'm hyped. I'm so hyped for it. But I don't think that there's going to be a super team type thing necessarily that's long standing, like a Justice League or an Avengers. But I would really like to see ISOM, Alpha Core, Yaira, Horseman, Gooding, Bloodruth, and possibly another new character teaming up for like a type of world-ending invasion-esque sort of story arc, you know? I think that would be really good. If ISOM does not fully put all of Avery's powers on blast, I think that would probably be the best way to really showcase how amazingly badass Isom truly is. Now, again, so if we're going off of, these are all brand new characters. They're all, essentially original characters. But let's go ahead and point out Isom is essentially like a cross between, as I had already pointed out earlier, Captain America with Super Saiyan cheat codes, I guess you could say. The whole Zenkai thing. Alpha Core is essentially like a building block. Is essentially the building blocks for a Justice League. Superman. Not sure where to put Braxwell, because he wouldn't be a Batman. But we have essentially a Superman-like character, and they're a super team, they're super police kind of stuff. So maybe more of an Avengers, who knows? And then there's of course Yaira, and okay, so I haven't talked enough about Yaira. All right, so I'm gonna go into a little bit of spoilers. Yaira's old as fuck, guys. Yaira is old as fuck. We find out in this book that she's been around since the Vikings were still invading England. She's an alien who fell to Earth, and her species are essentially just like elves. They age very, very slowly. I need to know more about her world, the people in it, what goes on there. I have so many questions, and here's what drives me crazy more and more when I think about it. I had this concept for a character in my own book. I shit you not. I am not even fucking kidding you right now. I have this comic series that I would like to actually put down. I have notes about it all over the place. I have some concept art, but I don't actually have a genuine book. Now, it is supposed to be reminiscent of the DC universe. I have characters that were inspired by different DC heroes, but they're supposed to be their own identity. Just so everybody is clear on something, there's no such thing as an original idea. It's just taking what exists and spinning it enough to make it your own. You can't have a superhero without somebody pointing out, that's just like this superhero. There isn't a single new superhero or a single new book that's coming out that is not some kind of a copy of something that already exists. So already throw that out the fucking window. I had this idea for a couple of characters in my book who are aliens, and their species, their race, come from a planet with harsh elements, very similar to our own: fire, air, water, earth, ice, and all that stuff. These characters, the two that I introduce in story, is a badass Viking-esque male with extreme ice powers who can fly and has super strength and super speed. Oh, that sounds very familiar. And then there's a female character who is a massive hothead who has the same type of powers, but she's actually fire. They're supposed to be sworn enemies. There are other humanoid characters that look just like us, but they're actually born of or inspired by various elements, and thus they have different fiery hair, icy eyes, stone-like flesh, lightning pulses, shit like that. Like, there's all kinds of different inhumane things that happens to them when they actually do activate their powers and fly around, but they could blend in with regular humans. And that's kind of the point, because the arc is supposed to later on be that these people that think they are so much better than humans kind of invade humanity, and they sort of live among people to inevitably conquer the planet and all that stuff. That was the whole premise of what I was doing to introduce these characters and all that shit. That's just that was my idea. And then here's Yaira, and I'm like, okay, was it Eric or was it Jen going through my skull? Because it feels like somebody was mind reading. Because that's similar, very similar to what I had idea-wise. But yeah, Yaira is way older than she appears. She has been around for a long time. And when I said there's a connection with this character, with a character introduced, because let me just go ahead and get this, bookmark it, and then I will bring you to the other page. Where is it? Okay. Remember that? Remember that? I have questions. I have questions. What's the connection? Is this guy related? So, I apologize for the over the top earlier, but I highly recommend these books. Gooding is going to be announced soon, so if you haven't picked up any of the Rippaverse books, maybe Gooding is going to be your book. If Gooding is not going to be your book, then I think Horseman is probably going to be your book. If you really like street level heroes akin to Daredevil or Batman, Horseman might be your book. If you're really into characters that are super smart and actually use tech to save the day and all that stuff, Gooding might be your book. Essentially, superhuman badass chick with ice powers. That's Yaira. Super police, so to speak. That's Alpha Core. And then very interesting power evolutionary. I call them power evolutionaries because they're characters whose powers, when we are first introduced to them, is not at its strongest. They develop over time. And there's some of my favorite characters, like Gambit. Gambit is my all-time favorite comic book character. Gambit's powers, when we are introduced to him, are actually nerfed compared to what he actually could have at that point. We later find this out in a variety of different stories, but basically, one of my favorite little sub-stories with Gambit is when he comes face-to-face with a semi-futuristic alternate universe version of himself called New Sun. And New Sun is basically an unnerved Gambit who accidentally blows up his entire planet and kills everything and everyone he loves. And he travels the multiverse to try and destroy all Gambits to prevent that from ever happening. Then he comes to the 616 and actually like encounters our Gambit, who then goes and gets the block removed from Mr. Sinister, who put the block on his brain to begin with, and suddenly he unlocks all of his powers. And then, without having to create an energy form, beats New Sun and somehow loses all that power and forgets who he is because the writers don't know what to fucking do with Gambit. Sadly. But you get what I'm saying. When we first are introduced to Gambit, he's not as powerful as he could be, and his powers evolve over time. And then eventually you find out, well, he actually hit the wall because he put a wall there. He had Mr. Sinister put a wall there. I love characters like that, which is why I love ISOM so much. I am looking forward to ISOM 3. I'm looking forward to Yaira number 2, for Alpha Core number 2, for all the books coming out. I need them. I need them now. Give me the books. But that is going to conclude my review. I'll be uploading this to my Rumble sometime later. And pretty much I'm probably going to take a few clips out of this just to showcase it and maybe throw it at people. Like I don't know. I might harass Eric with some of the call outs and everything. But shout out to Cap White on X. He's Kanan White, the artist of the Book of Yaira that I got. Book of Yaira. Shout out to the Saska sisters, to Deborah Carita, to Joe Bennett, Chuck Dixon, Eric July, Cliff Richards, Gabe El Taib, Big Man Comics. Go and check those out too, because that's Gabe El Taib's thing. But also shout out to Hail the Lore and a handful of other people that Bruce. Can't forget Bruce. Thank you, Sparky, Ram, and Paradise for actually watching for the times that you were actually watching, if you are still watching. And yeah, I will, next time you see me, I'm going to be reviewing a few horror movies. More specifically, I'm going to be reviewing something else the Saskas have done that actually I love. And that is going to be the horror movie American Mary, 2012, made by two Canadians, called American Mary. Well, yeah. But yeah, I've been on a horror movie and a Western kick lately. So basically, I'm going to be, and yes, I probably will throw in a couple of horror Westerns at some point in the future. But for now, I'm going to take off. I hope everybody enjoyed themselves. I hope I could get better at this, the streaming stuff. I'd like, a little more things going on, like maybe something for everybody to watch before I actually, when I start the streams and get into the streaming and everything. And I don't know. I just feel like I'm kind of letting myself and other people down just in case other people actually want to watch it. But we are growing whatever we can, whenever we can. This is just the first of many review streams I'm going to have. So yeah, like I said, the next one is going to be American Mary review. And then after that, I probably start talking about Westerns that I've really been enjoying lately. You know what? True Grit. After I do the American Mary review in a couple of weeks, in a few weeks, I'm probably going to do a full review of both the original True Grit and the new and the remake of True Grit with Jeff Bridges. So keep an eye out for that, and I will see everybody later. Have a good one. Good night, everybody.